You followed the rules. You stayed quiet, kept your hands clean, did what was right, and still the world didn't notice. Or worse, it noticed and ignored you. Your silence wasn't respected. Your kindness was mistaken for softness. Every time you showed loyalty, they calculated. Every time you opened your heart, they drew their knives sharper. They weren't waiting for your honesty. They were watching for your weakness. And every time you hesitated to protect yourself, they moved without hesitation to protect their position. You've played the game as a man. But men get broken. They get chewed up in a system that respects force more than fairness. And the few who survive? They become something else entirely. Something colder. Something that walks through fire and doesn't flinch. It isn't cruelty. It's evolution. There comes a moment when a man stops asking why they did it, why it happened to him, why it's not fair. That's the turning point. The moment the man you were dies, and something unshakable is born in his place. A strategist, a storm, a force the world doesn't negotiate with, it braces for. Call it rebirth. Call it God mode. It doesn't matter, because in that moment, you stop playing for applause. You stop waiting for the world to give you permission. You take control. No emotion, no guilt, no hesitation. Just strategy, sharp as a blade, cloaked in silence and delivered without mercy. And suddenly, you're not the man they used to know. You're unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. This isn't divinity, it's dominance. And this isn't a message designed to hype you up. It's a death sentence for the obedient version of yourself. That version dies here, right now. What rises in its place is someone who doesn't need to be loud to lead, who doesn't seek revenge, but orchestrates consequence. Someone who bends the room without speaking, who commands without chasing, who shifts the tide without lifting a finger. Machiavelli didn't ask for power. He engineered it. He didn't wait for the world to see his worth. He built a reality that made them feel it. And if you're still depending on recognition to feel valuable, you've already lost. Before you become powerful, you have to destroy the part of you that needs to be seen. The part that wants to be acknowledged, praised, liked. That's the first weapon your enemies will use against you. If you crave applause, you've already surrendered leverage. If you need people to understand your heart, they'll carve into it. Machiavelli watched rulers crumble, not because they lacked strength, but because they wanted credit. They couldn't resist being admired, and the moment they needed to be loved, they were already owned. Real power begins where visibility ends. You don't act for validation. You act for results. Quietly, calculated, without asking for permission or recognition. Let them ignore you. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you're harmless. That's the beauty of silence. It disguises leverage. And when the moment comes, the same ones who laughed at your invisibility will kneel before the influence they never saw coming. The ones who move like ghosts don't need to convince. They don't try to be seen as powerful. They simply become powerful. Through consistency, through detachment, through actions that reshape outcomes while everyone else is busy chasing attention. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be inevitable. The more invisible your motives, the more dangerous your presence becomes. While others try to be understood, you speak in silence, and they won't even realize you've changed the game until it's too late to win it. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to control what they feel when your name enters the room. That feeling must be fear, not chaos, not rage, but precision-crafted fear. The kind that makes people hesitate before testing you. The kind that whispers in their mind before they say your name out loud. It isn't about being a monster. It's about being a memory that walks with them before they ever meet you. Fear is the purest currency of power. It doesn't bend with public opinion. It doesn't fade with absence. It creates order where ideals fail. Machiavelli understood that softness invites betrayal. Fear, when wielded correctly, invites respect. You don't want people to love you. Love fades. Love gets comfortable. Love gets clumsy. But fear, that stays, that lingers, that demands caution. It makes them calculate before they act. You are no longer asking people to like you. You're engineering a nervous system response. You become a presence, a variable they must consider, a weight in the room that shifts conversation before you say a word. How do you do it? First, become unpredictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate. They smile when expected, react when provoked, speak when silence is golden. You do the opposite. You let them sit in uncertainty. You let your silence breed paranoia. You speak less, but when you do, every word lands with force. You smile less, but when you do, they question why. Your unpredictability becomes your armor. They no longer know what to expect, and that makes every step they take near you feel like walking across glass. Next, be disproportionate occasionally. Be calm 95% of the time, but when you act, let it be unforgettable, not explosive, not dramatic, just cold, calculated, irreversible, a quiet exile, a door that never opens again, one denied opportunity, one closed connection, delivered without a word. That one instance rewires their entire understanding of you. They start calculating before crossing you again. Then weaponize absence. There's nothing more powerful than a man who disappears when expected and appears when least convenient. Absence creates tension. Tension creates caution. While most people use attention to feel important, you use absence to build myth. Leave meetings unfinished. Exit rooms without announcements. Let your silence be a cliffhanger. They'll start thinking about you more when you're not around than when you are. That's how power haunts. And never, ever explain. Justifying your choices is submission dressed as courtesy. When you explain yourself, you hand people leverage. Let them wonder. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. You rise above it, not out of arrogance, but because you're no longer operating in their reality. They don't get access to your thoughts. They just get the results. Machiavelli understood the elegance of silence. He never envied the king who shouted from the throne. He admired the shadow behind it, the one whose words moved kingdoms but whose face was never seen. That's the level. The one they can't attack, because they can't even prove you exist. While others chase clout, you build control brick by brick behind their backs. Let them get the spotlight. Let them soak up the credit. You craft the world from behind the curtain. You speak once, and the system bends. You make one move, and the field reshapes. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You've become a presence, something they can't define, can't predict, can't resist. And the less they see of your hand, the more they fear what it's holding. Power isn't about force, it's about presence. The strongest man in the room isn't the loudest or most visible. It's the one no one can touch because no one knows what he's really capable of. They don't fear you because of what you've done. They fear you because they don't know what you might do. Your name becomes a variable they account for in silence. They rehearse their words before meetings. They hesitate before they cross lines. And not because you told them to, because they've seen what happens when others did. You must become untouchable, not just in your actions, but in perception. Power isn't merely control over outcomes, it's control over imagination. When people can't define you, they make you bigger, more dangerous, more capable than you are. That projection becomes your shield. That uncertainty is your greatest weapon. This isn't fame. It's not celebrity. It's mythology. A presence so meticulously engineered that no one dares to reach for it. They don't challenge it because they don't know where it starts or ends. Machiavelli taught us this truth. What people think you are matters more than what you actually are. Appear powerful. Appear precise. Appear untouchable. And that alone will change how the world interacts with you. You let them see only the version you craft. You let them imagine the rest. And the mind, fearful, uncertain, will always fill in the blanks with something more extreme than reality. That's how fear becomes legend. That's how your name becomes a shadow that enters the room before you do. Your mask must be perfect, cold, composed, unreadable. You don't give them emotion. You give them posture, stillness, precision. You become a mirror that reflects their anxiety. You say little, but every word feels rehearsed. You move sparingly, but each step shifts the ground. That's how you build gravity. That's how you pull everything into orbit without asking, without lifting a finger. Give them no details. Don't overshare. Don't argue. Let them question. Let them doubt. Their speculation becomes your fog. Their fear fills in your silence. And silence is the architect of mystery. Mystery is the birthplace of power. When they speak against you, your reputation should be so well forged, so silently enforced, that their voice sounds like jealousy. When they try to challenge you, the room should instinctively side with you, not because they know you, but because they fear what they don't. That's dominance, not through noise, but through inevitability. You become the standard they measure themselves against, the shadow they prepare for, the presence they can't decipher. And you build that not with emotion, but with structure, strategy, precision. If you let them know your fears, they'll use them. If you expose your desires, they'll exploit them. So you bury them deep. You build a mask that is polite but detached, calm but unreadable, generous but always in control. You give just enough to make them feel comfortable, but never enough to be predictable. The ones who fail, fail because they wanted to be known. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to be understood. But understanding is a gateway to control. And if they understand you, they'll think they can outmaneuver you. You must remain beyond understanding. Untouchable. Unreachable. Because when your image becomes untouchable, your influence becomes automatic. You no longer ask. You no longer convince. You no longer explain. You exist, and they adjust. You've become gravity. They don't follow out of loyalty. They follow because they don't want to float in the void of not knowing where you are. Understand what this truly means. It means you never belong to anyone again. Not to their expectations, not to their movements, not to their systems. You are your own axis. You rotate on cold principles, not shifting feelings. You're not moved by trends, applause, or outrage. You move by intent, strategy, impact. You listen to everyone, but say almost nothing. You absorb everything, but reveal no plan. You stay present, but never available. You give just enough to stay relevant, but never enough to be vulnerable. You become an entity people admire, reference, respect, but can never quite define. And when they try to figure you out, they find fragments, echoes, patterns that lead nowhere. Because by the time they try to pin you down, you've already moved. This is how power becomes permanent. Through disappearance, through detachment, through discipline. The game is never about force. It's about the illusion of force. The anticipation of your next move becomes more powerful than the move itself. You stop defending yourself. You stop reacting. You stop proving. You simply are. The moment they believe they can reach you is the moment they try to control you. Never give them that hope. You show up just enough to remind them you're watching, and then you vanish again. That absence will do more than presence ever could. Because while presence builds fame, absence builds power. The more invisible your strategy, the more undeniable your influence becomes. They'll never be able to point to exactly how you did it. They'll just know that the room shifted, that choices bent, that outcomes realigned, and your name was whispered somewhere behind it all. That's the final evolution. Not domination through fire, but through stillness, through silence, through inevitability. It's not the king at the front of the war that wins the empire. It's the shadow behind the curtain that never has to fight, but always wins. But there's one chain left to break, and it's the hardest one. The final chain isn't fear. It's not doubt. It's not weakness. It's emotion. As long as you're tied to feelings, you're a servant to them. As long as your mind can be hijacked by guilt, anger, affection, or pride, you are predictable. And what is predictable can be manipulated. It can be used. It can be broken. Machiavelli never trusted emotion. He studied it. He dissected it. He used it as a weapon. But he never surrendered to it. He understood what most men can't stomach. Emotion is the leash. Logic is the sword. You've been told to follow your heart. That advice buries empires. That advice builds martyrs, not rulers. The ones who rise are the ones who feel everything, but act on nothing unless it serves the plan. The ones who smile while being betrayed, who wait while being underestimated, who strike only when it shifts the balance of power. They don't flinch, not because they don't feel, but because they've already buried the part of themselves that needed justice, that needed fairness, that needed to be liked. You've reached the level where your decisions are no longer emotional. They're mathematical, they're surgical, they're merciless. You let your emotions scream in private, but your public face remains unshaken. You've trained yourself to respond only when it builds your position, and to remain silent when it doesn't. You stop speaking to be understood. You speak only to disrupt, to direct, to destabilize. And when it's done, you say nothing more. Let them sit with your silence. Let them wonder if they made a mistake. Let them fear that you're still calculating. Justice? That's a fairy tale. The powerful don't seek justice. They seek leverage. And when leverage is built, justice becomes irrelevant. So does opinion. So does approval. Because you're no longer here to serve an audience. You're here to build a fortress. You stop needing to be seen as good. That illusion is a prison, a performance that strips your hands of control. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be forgiven. You're here to be sovereign. Every man still tethered to emotion is a target. Easy to provoke, easy to read, easy to destroy. But when you cut that tether, when you let your humanity fade from view, they don't know how to fight you anymore. You become the one who smiles in silence and strikes without warning, the one who feels pain but never bleeds in public, the one who loves but never hands over power, the one who is insulted but never distracted. They'll say you're cold. They'll call you ruthless. They'll claim you lost your soul. But what they don't understand is you finally claimed it. You no longer sell your peace to anyone who knocks on your door. You don't rent out your mind to people who don't deserve your attention. You've severed the chain, and now you are in command. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to be validated. You don't need anyone to approve of your path. That desire is gone, burned away, replaced by something sharper, clarity, cold, emotionless clarity. Every move you make now has one purpose, to fortify your position and expand your influence. You don't ask, is this fair? You ask, does this strengthen me? Does this weaken them? The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards leverage. It bows not to the kind, but to the calculating. You've stopped praying for balance. You've started building your own weight. And now, the chains are off. You've stepped out of the game you used to play, the one built on approval and emotion, and into the one built on dominance, design, and detachment. You are no longer part of their system. You are the force that reshapes it. While they chase comfort, you embrace pressure. While they seek applause, you seek angles. While they react, you plan. You don't rise by chance, you rise by engineering. And you don't step into the spotlight. You move it, quietly, surgically, until it shines where you want it to, and everyone thinks it moved on its own. And now, when power finally begins working in your favor, when influence starts orbiting around you instead of away from you, there's one final trap. The last test. Comfort. Because once you've built power, the hunger returns. But this time it wears a different mask. It's not the hunger to rise, it's the hunger to be loved again, to be seen, to explain, to finally say, see, I made it. That is how most men lose it all. They rise like rulers and kneel like entertainers. They conquer like kings and then beg like followers. They forget what got them there. They get soft, they get seen. And once they are seen, they can be studied. Once studied, they can be struck. You cannot afford that. Machiavelli never admired the man who rose once. He admired the man who stayed in power because he never left the throne. The one who ruled in silence and never let the people close enough to strike. He knew the truth. It is safer to be feared than loved, because fear survives your absence. Love fades. Love finds a new home. Love breeds expectations. Fear breeds boundaries. Power is not emotional. It is strategic. And your survival depends on that distance. Not just physical, but psychological. You must maintain the gap between who you are and what they see. They should know the mask, not the man. Because the moment they believe they understand you, they'll believe they can stop you. And the moment they believe that, they'll try. But when your thoughts are hidden, when your motives are unreadable, when your silence becomes the only language they hear, they lose their footing. They can't strike what they can't define. And that's your fortress. That's the kingdom built not on trust, but on mystery. Not on emotion, but on fear. Not on praise, but on results. You're not one of them anymore. You've left the crowd. You've become the architect of the room they gather in. You belong to no ideology. You follow no trend. You represent nothing but your own dominion, your own empire of cold principles and precise intent. You listen to everyone but echo no one. You let people feel involved but know they are replaceable. You never grow dependent on anyone. Dependence is the breeding ground of weakness, and weakness is the invitation to be devoured. Now you move different. Not louder, just more precise. Not faster, just higher. You move like a man with no competition because you've made it so. You've stopped reacting. You've stopped proving. You've stopped chasing a place in a world you now control. You've become the figure they mention in whispers, the one they feel but never quite understand. The one whose name shifts the energy in a room, who forces everyone to measure their words before speaking, not because you threatened them, but because they don't know what you'll do. You've buried your past self, the one who wanted to be good, understood, liked. That man was breakable. You've replaced him with a strategist, a presence, a myth. You've become inhuman, not because you lost your soul, but because you refused to sell it anymore. You're not angry, You're not bitter. You're beyond all that. You've evolved. You've become the presence that moves the pieces while everyone else is still learning how to play. And the more they try to analyze you, the less they understand. Because what they're studying isn't a man anymore. It's an echo, a design, a force, something sculpted in silence and hardened by control. You are no longer a part of the equation. You are the variable they must always account for, but never fully predict. The one that haunts the blueprint. That's power. The kind that doesn't need to be explained. It's just felt and feared. You've become the myth that doesn't argue, doesn't shout, doesn't defend. You don't respond to slander. You don't react to betrayal. You absorb it, convert it, weaponize it. Your enemies speak against you, and your legend grows. They can't reach you, and that's what eats at them most. Because the world trains people to believe everything should be seen, shared, understood. But you remain distant. And in that distance, you become a monument. Power doesn't beg. Power doesn't justify. Power doesn't explain itself to the crowd it no longer serves. It simply exists, and everything else adjusts. Machiavelli understood this. He saw the world as it is, indifferent, ruthless, unforgiving to those who cling to weakness. The world wasn't against you. It was just never built to protect the quiet, the kind, the honest. You weren't betrayed. You were exposed. You weren't overlooked. You were predictable. But now you've changed. You've stopped playing by their rules. You've stopped offering explanations. You've stopped surrendering your emotions to people who haven't earned your presence. You've become the unseen hand, the strategist in the shadows, the one they feel before they know. The final evolution is complete. You no longer cry out for justice. You create consequences. You no longer look for respect. You command it without saying a word. You are not here to be part of the crowd. You are here to move the crowd, and if they resist, you erase the room and rebuild it. They don't get to choose anymore. You do. Your persona is your armor. Your silence is your sword. Your absence is your strategy. And your name is the only warning they'll get. Now you've reached God mode. You've shed every weakness, emotion, need, recognition. You've removed every pattern they could use to predict you. You've erased every image they could use to define you. What's left is precision, stillness, control. And now that you've arrived, you never go back. You never kneel again. You never beg again. You never reach back for the comfort of the system you've outgrown. You don't explain yourself to people who cannot comprehend your level. You don't waste energy proving to people you've already passed. You let them talk. You let them wonder. You let them guess how you built what they can't destroy. They will never understand it. That's the cost of real power. You stop being relatable. You become inevitable. So the only question that remains is, what will you do with it? Will you take this blueprint and shape something untouchable? Will you rule without applause, build without noise, and command without ever raising your voice? Or will you fall back into comfort, into softness, into visibility? Make your choice, because if you're ready to rule from the shadows, to dominate without being seen, to control without ever being touched, then you already know what comes next. This world was never meant to stop you. It was only meant to test who deserved to rise. Welcome to God mode. You've arrived, and now you never turn it off, ever.